Your joints hurt from osteoarthritis, so you're wondering whether there are natural ways to reduce pain. You wonder, is there a specific diet you can follow to reduce the joint pain of osteoarthritis? There is, but it's not what you think. So I'm going to say this preemptively. This video is probably going to be controversial. A lot of advice about diet and nutrition for osteoarthritis is done based on bad science. It looks at research in rheumatoid arthritis, which is a world of difference than osteoarthritis. Now, the only commonality they have is the word arthritis, joint inflammation, but the cause of the inflammation is different. In osteoarthritis, inflammation is a consequence of the condition. In rheumatoid arthritis, inflammation is the cause of the condition. That's one example of bad science. Another one is that common advice about nutrition and diet for osteoarthritis is taken from studies on rats, mice, and petri dishes. We can't generalize that to people. Another example is that they look at short-term reductions in inflammation, but they don't actually ask the person, do your joints hurt less? It's one thing to just look at blood data, but pain is a unique experience that you can't really see based on inflammatory data on the lab test. So it's based on bad science. What I'm going to give you in here is advice based on good science, based on research specifically in osteoarthritic people, not mice, rats, or petri dishes. The one and only way to reduce joint pain of osteoarthritis is only weight loss, and that's it. Which kind of sucks for you if you have osteoarthritis and you're lean to begin with. Then you have other approaches besides nutrition. You should look at other approaches like exercise, certain supplements, which we talk about in other videos, but nutrition is probably not going to work for you if you're a person with osteoarthritis and normal weight. Now, if you're a person with osteoarthritis and you're overweight, weight loss will work wonders. In one 18-month study, 316 overweight or obese adults with knee osteoarthritis were divided into 4 groups. Group number 1 was a control group. Group number 2, they only got dietary advice. And their only advice was reduce your calories by 500 calories per day, increase fruits and veggies, choose whole grains over refined grains, reduce saturated fats, include lean protein sources, and decrease sugar and sodium. Very basic nutritional advice, nothing fancy there. Group number 3 did exercise only, and group number 4 combined diet plus exercise. So this is a fine, well-controlled study in people with osteoarthritis. At the end of the study, here were the results. The control group, of course, had no changes in their weight or their pain levels. Makes sense, they didn't get any advice, they didn't do any exercise. The diet-only group, they lost 5% of their starting body weight and reduced their pain by 15%. Now, of course, pain is a subjective thing. You can't look at a blood test and see that's pain. So this is a person rating their pain levels on a 0 to 10 scale. The exercise group lost 1.2% of their starting weight, but reduced their pain by 21%, which is interesting. They lost a lot less weight than the diet-only group, but their pain was reduced a lot more. Finally, the last group that did diet and exercise lost 6.2% of their starting body weight and had a 33% reduction in pain. So isn't that interesting? They just weight loss. Nothing fancy there, not an anti-inflammatory diet, not the Mediterranean diet, not keto, not intermittent fasting, nothing fancy there, just basic portion control, just reduce your calories and that's it. That alone helped them improve their joint pain. Now, what about common dietary advice for osteoarthritis? Well, one of the most common pieces of advice given is eat an anti-inflammatory diet. The reason for this is very logical. Osteoarthritis, anything ending in itis, is inflammatory. Therefore, you need something to reduce the inflammation. But does it really work? But first, let's define what that is. What is an anti-inflammatory diet? First, it just means include things that reduce inflammation, especially omega-3s, as well as antioxidants and a special class of antioxidants called polyphenols. So one of the approaches of an anti-inflammatory diet is add things that are anti-inflammatory. The other component is to reduce things that are pro-inflammatory, especially sugar and saturated fat. So how does the anti-inflammatory diet affect joint pain? Well, some studies show that the anti-inflammatory diet does reduce inflammation, but not pain. Remember, inflammation you can see on a blood test. Pain you can't see. Pain is inside somebody's head. In another 2-month study, 60 overweight or obese women with knee osteoarthritis were divided into 2 groups. Group number 1 was just placed on a low-calorie diet. Group number 2 was placed on a low-calorie diet made up of anti-inflammatory foods. So what was the difference? At the end of the study, the anti-inflammatory diet group lost more weight and reduced their pain by between 9.7 and 16.5%. but they also lost more weight. So do we attribute the greater pain reduction to the greater weight reduction? Not really. So if there's two components that change, one is anti-inflammatory and therefore lowering calories, well, you can't really compare apples to apples. So does an anti-inflammatory diet help? It helps you if you lose weight. It doesn't help you if you don't lose weight. So it's not really the anti-inflammatory components per se that are responsible for the pain reduction. It's really the weight loss, just the mechanical pressure on joints. Another common diet frequently recommended for osteoarthritis joint pain is the Mediterranean diet. What does the research have to say about that? Before we look into that, let's just define what the Mediterranean diet is. It is a diet high in olive oil, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains to be consumed daily. Several times per week should be made up of fish, poultry, dairy, and nuts. And infrequently, people would have red meat and sweets. So that is a general Mediterranean diet. How does it work for joint pain from osteoarthritis? Let's see what the research has to say. In one 16-week study, 99 people with osteoarthritis were divided into two groups. Group number 1 ate the Mediterranean diet. Group number 2 was a control group. At the end of the study, here were the results. The Mediterranean diet group reduced their inflammation by 47%. If you're wondering how is inflammation measured, it's with an inflammatory marker called interleukin-1 alpha. There was also improvement in the range of motion of the knee, but they lost 2.2% of their body weight. So again, is it because of the Mediterranean diet or because of the weight loss? To really study the impact of the Mediterranean diet only, you have to feed these people enough calories so that they don't lose weight. Then you can isolate the effects of the Mediterranean diet from weight loss. Another long-term study on the Mediterranean diet found that those who followed it weighed 8% less and had less osteoarthritis symptoms. So again, is that due to the Mediterranean diet itself or to better compliance to the Mediterranean diet and therefore weight loss? I would venture to say more weight loss than anything special about the Mediterranean diet or the anti-inflammatory diet. The main verdict is that any diet that helps with weight loss will improve osteoarthritis joint pain. The method of weight loss doesn't matter, whether you do the Mediterranean diet, anti-inflammatory diet, keto, vegan, carnivore, etc. As long as it helps with weight loss, it will help with osteoarthritis. So what's the bottom line? For people who have more than 10% of their body weight to lose, weight loss and nutrition will have a significant impact on their osteoarthritis joint pain. However, if you're already of normal weight or you're lean, nutrition probably doesn't have a lot to offer you in terms of osteoarthritis pain reduction. You're better off looking at approaches in terms of exercise and supplements. And finally, the final message is if you do have weight to lose, how you do it doesn't matter. Just do it in whatever way you want, portion control or any other approach. If you like this video, I have a newsletter with lots more information just like this. Click on the link in the description below and you'll get access to this newsletter for free. You always have the option of subscribing. Thank you and goodbye.